riding on a wave, and we only going up, working every day, man, let's take it to the top.
Shout out to the bro QJ for that awesome intro. He's a friend, bro, who was able to bring that together. But brother, very happy to have you on the show finally. Ko tai mai nei te wā, bro, for us to have this wananga, for this kōrero. And so, brother, Rawhitiroa, nau mai.
Yeah, tēnā koe, bro. Yeah, hari kona te ngākau ko whai wāhi tau ki te kōrero, bro.
Man, and for those who might not be aware of who you are, bro, ko wai koe and just a bit of an overview of some of the things that you do, brother.
Yeah, ko te Rawhitiroa hau, no Ngāti Kahu, no Ngāpuhi, no whangaroa, no te taitokerau, engari tupuake I Waikato, mo te ronga o taku oranga. Yeah, so from the far north, from Whangaroa up north, and grew up in Whangaroa down in Raglan. And over the last how many years, been working in like youth development first, for a lot of years, and kaupapa Māori youth development, te aho tūroa ko tuia, te rārangatira, kaupapa like that. And then really I decided, like maybe, I think it was 4 matariki ago or 5 matariki ago, to lean hard in on my photography work. So I've been doing that, doing a few podcasts as well. Basically wananga, eh? Like I'm someone who grew up in wananga, bro, so yeah, I love it. Live for it, definitely.
Bro, you just seem to be like one of those guys, you know, kei wiwi, kei wāwara, bro, e karore haere te whenua, bro. It just seems as though a kaupapa is happening here. And then, bro, there's another kaupapa happening here, and Rawhitiroa's at all of these different kaupapa, bro. So, like you said, when you grow up in that kind of environment, it's almost like home for you, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was really lucky to be kohanga reo kid, kura kaupapa kid, ātārangi kid. So mum and all my aunties and nan were all setting up te ātārangi back in the day. So we were those kids around the kaupapa all the time, and blessing and a curse, bro. Blessing and a curse. Blessing in that, you know, we were, you know, privileged to be in the richness of those kaupapa and everything that came with it, but also a curse because now I work so hard all the time because that's all I've seen. You know, my mum especially fully committed to the kaupapa, like lives, breathes kaupapa, you know, te hāpai, te iwi Māori, te Ao Māori. But that's who I am, and that's continued in whatever mahi I've chosen to do. So when I was in the youth development stuff, kaupapa Māori, working with our taitamariki, with our rangatahi, and so fulfilling, you know, so enriching, and working with our people. And same when I decided to flex another muscle and go into my photography game, and haven't looked back.
And what do you think about in terms of this whole youth development stage, bro? What are some of the beautiful things that have come with working closely with our young people?
Yeah, rangatahi magic, eh? Like actual magic. And like I look at, you know, shows like America's Got Talent and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, I can just close my eyes and point at anyone in a room, at any wharekura, and they all got more talent than whoever's on stage in the show, you know, like that sort of thing. Right. So now it was really enriching, and the way that we work with our rangatahi, with our tuakana crew, really sort of mentored that and brought that out in them. And basically what it all came down to was identity.
Wow.
You know, so we were using, te aho tūroa ko tuia, we were using our kōrero nehe and performing arts as like as a waka. And basically it was a way to reconnect our taitamariki with themselves, with our stories, with our histories, with the things that our tupuna did. And, you know, when they're getting up to embody the stories of their tupuna, suddenly they stand a little bit taller, and suddenly they, you know, open up a little bit. And just like teaching them some of those little tricks that, you know, my tuakana, I remember when I was with Takirua Te Ao Māori season, doing the Te Ao Māori season, travelling around the country, when we were practicing, the bro Francis Kora, he told me that this thing about, you know, when you stand on the stage, open up. And when you open up, you know, you feel more confident, you look more confident. And if you crouch down and close up, then you look more, you know. So those little things, and just teaching our rangatahi that, you know, how you stand, how you address people, things that a lot, you know, just come naturally to us. Like if you Googled what are people's top 10 fears, public speaking
is up there.
It was before death, bro.
Yeah.
Public speaking, then death, and then, you know, some other stuff. I roto I tō tātou ahurea though, you know, like people still get nervous, and, you know, I know people
It
still
comes.
freak out before a whai kōrero or whatever, but it's natural to us, you know, for our tai tamariki to get up and introduce, you know, kōrero tō pepeha or, you know, things like manu kōrero, you know, that is within us.
Yeah.
And that's another Māori superpower, babe.
I think
We
it
got
is
heaps
too.
of superpowers.
Bro, I believe we've got a lot too, but just one of those things where we have that natural talent, but also that natural confidence if we do identify ourselves as, you know, tēnei mea te Māori. Because when I think about, people always ask me, bro, where does my confidence come from? Where does my ability to articulate whakaaro come from? And I always think about, bro, it comes from kapa haka.
Yeah.
You know, being able to sort of stand up on stage and just proudly represent and do haka and do all of these different things, it's actually contributed to the confidence that I have in myself now.
Straight up.
And I could honestly imagine, just because when I was doing rangatahi mahi as well, there's something beautiful about recognizing something in our young people and then journeying alongside them until they recognize it themselves.
Yeah.
And do you feel that is still something that we navigate through now, bro? Like we're still trying to recognize our powers and how do we express those? Like, do you think that's still something that's happening now?
Yeah, in general, with everyone, and that's tai tamariki up to pakeke. You know, like
That's right.
there's pakeke that, you know, say they're on their reo journey. As they learn their reo, they learn more about who they are and they get more confident at age 40, at age 50. You know, so that's not a thing, you know, e kore mutu tēnei mea te ako. You know, we're always going to be learning, and if we're opening up, you know, our superpowers, then, you know, ka
good
tūranga
feeling,
tira.
eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is really cool. Like, I love what you said about working alongside a rangatahi and seeing them from when they come in closed and, you know, low and, you know, ko te Rawhitiroa tōku ingoa, you know, and then turning into, at the end, you know.
That's right.
It's massive, real
It's a
rewarding.
buzzing.
And it also, I think about all the people that put time and energy and effort and love into me as I was growing up. All the lessons I learned, all the time, all the experiences that people shared with me and stuff like that. And I'm like, they've all put that into me. Like, of course I'm going to like pass it on. And then we think about the hundreds of rangatahi that we work with. I'm like, if one of them has the amount of impact that I feel like I've had in my life, you know, that's huge. But if 50 of them had that impact, you know, like every time, it just gets bigger and bigger, and that's exciting.
I love that. I love that whole whakaaro. Some of the things that just gives me a lot of like goosebumps and a lot of wairua, bro, is just that whole whakaaro of just the ripple effect.
Yeah,
We
bro.
just don't know the impact that we have and our stories have in terms of what it looks like for the long term and what it looks like for the many people that it branches out to when we just sort of show up in our own way. And some of the things that, you know, I think about straight away when I think about you, Te Rawhitiroa, was a kōrero that Te Aorere said within the podcast that we had, and it was around Maui and how it wasn't about that story of him actually roping the sun and bringing it back, but it was more to that, and it speaks to the innovative things that we have that's inherent within us as Māori. So do you want to talk more about that purakau, bro?
Yeah, that was beautiful. And that actually came from a wananga with my tuakana with Anatonio Te Maioha. He went in, bro, on those Maui stories, and he's got an incredible creative mind, and he like changed a whole lot of things, like questioning about the story of Mahuika. Was she really just a grouchy old lady who was dumb enough to give this haututu little fella, you know, nearly all of her nails? You know,
Right.
was she really dumb enough? Because he's like, Antonio said to me, he's like, if you were tamanui te rā, would you give your son to marry an idiot? Really? For one. So Atua sent his son, kia moi kia mahuika, kia pita ko te ahi, you know, to come down to us. So one, would you send your son to marry an idiot? You know,
Wow.
and if she was the guardian of fire, one of the most destructive and creative forces in the world, would she be an idiot? He's like, well, so what if she was testing Maui and he failed the test that many times? She was
Wow.
testing whether he is responsible enough. She was testing whether he's whakaaro nui enough. She was testing him and his character and the way that he would look after this incredible treasure. And he failed every time. Maybe her plan was to put it in the trees all along.
Wow.
And then he goes further into like, and maybe that big fire that, you know, that people say, oh, she threw it at Maui, she missed him. okay. So she's a like superwoman, and she just missed him with her nail, you know, and it caused this big fire. But maybe that big fire was her pure of herself, of that responsibility of holding on to fire, because now she's put it into the rako, so she doesn't have to hold it anymore. Maybe that was her transition from one stage to another. So Antonio, I'm going to credit him. That was his kōrero, and it just made me go, boom, like, look at these stories in a different way. And we made this book series called Pangorawa Kupuki, and he wrote them, Antonio wrote them. We created these books with the bro Ho. He did the illustrations, right? Beautiful. And then we created like audio books and stuff. Reo Māori, Reo Pākehā, but basically breaking down these Maui stories from the perspective of these two young fellas, Pangorawa Kupuki, and they're talking about, like, after the lights have gone out, they're like, oh, what did mum say? You know, that story about Maui, and things like breaking down, like, mum made a soccer ball and put a plasticine island, and then, like, spun it, and you can only see the island, and then she slowly spun it, and then up came Te Ao Māori. It is like you're fishing up. Bro, so that story, we talked about that. And then when I sailed on the waka, so I've sailed on the waka haurua, beautiful, beautiful kaupapa, and, like, life-changing, bro. Like, you are embodying what your tupuna did. And whakatinanatanga kāre i tu atu i tērā, like, i te wheako, it was amazing. And I remember it wasn't actually the big sales that I did. It was one of the smaller sales from Rarotonga to Aitutaki, and Matuatua Pittman. He's one of the poor navigators. He was navigating us on this haerenga, and there was one stage he told me I was talking too much. Not supposed to talk when you're on the hoi. Anyway, got a growling. But he goes, half an hour over there, hold that line. I was like, okay, sweet. I was like cheeky. I checked my time. I was like, let's see if it's half an hour. Bro, half an hour, bang on. This little thing starts coming out of the water. And then as we got closer and closer, more and more clouds started forming. And then after a while, you start seeing this little dark thing pop up, and then more and more clouds. And as we got closer, bro, we pulled Aitutaki out of the sea. And I was like, bro, I'm Maui. Like, this is it. This is what Maui did. Maui used, you know. Do you think his grandmother gave her jawbone? How can she eat if she gave her jawbone? Like, me as a 5-year-old, I was like, if she gave her jaw, how can she even eat? She's going to die. What a stupid. You know? No, kauwairunga, kauwairaro. Celestial knowledge, terrestrial knowledge, you know, the Hawaii up knowledge, and then, like, tangata, down, how to live on this planet. So he went to his grandmother. She gave her jawbone, her kauwairaro. She gave her information, her knowledge on how to navigate. So she must have had navigational knowledge, you know, what stars to follow, what winds to, you know, what whales, what birds to get to Aotearoa. She told Maui the way, and it was with that fish hook that he told his brothers to go further than they've ever gone before. Keep going, keep going, keep going. He used this fish hook, the mātauranga, to pull up Aotearoa.
Wow.
Like, that's the story, bro.
Wow.
So now with that, think about any other story that you've been told. Even Rangi and Papa, those sorts of stories. Think of any story you've been told and start to think deeper, because who wrote those stories down? And this is what we were doing with the kids, with Te Ao, with Kotuia.
Right.
We're going, okay, so you look at your kōrero nehe, but what does this mean? Like,
because it's not just pictures.
What is this taniwha a representation of? Was it actually a taniwha? Or, like, was it actually a serpent being? Or was it an energy? Or was it a dangerous corner of the river? There's a taniwha down there, be careful.
Wow.
Was it an undercurrent that drowned 3 kids last summer? So from now on, we say there's a taniwha down there, kaukau I reira. You know, like those sorts of things, like how te kurahuna. What is beyond that? Because our tupuna were onto it, and we didn't have a written language because they didn't need one. They told stories, and if you're going to tell a story, you know, if they told a story and said, okay, Maui was a navigator, he went to his grandmother, she told him the knowledge how to get to New Zealand, how to get to Aotearoa, and then he went with his brothers and he told them the way and he told them to go further. What a boring story.
Yeah, that's right. You
Do
won't
you
be
th-
able to like hold on to that,
Do you think that's going to be told around a campfire? Do you think, someone's going to tell that? Wow, did you hear that story about this guy who got told the way and then sailed to Aotearoa?
Yeah.
No. Our tupuna were onto it. They made the stories bigger. They made like rich with metaphor. Like here my bro Hohua talk about the story of Mataora. Every little detail within that story has its own kurahuna,
Wow.
has its own wananga. And that's the thing, like our motetea, every sentence, every word has its own wananga. And so every motetea is an encyclopedia,
Wow.
This Maui story is actually, like if you actually go into it, this means this means this, this means this.
It's just
And
rich.
It's massive, bro. So as soon as you wake people up to that, like, man,
That's our superpower again, bro? It's just like looking at the depth that we actually have, but the meaning behind all of these purakau, and then how does that make you feel, bro, as Māori and as a creative, understanding that depth that our tupuna had, and now you dissecting it and seeing in a way that they saw, or trying to actually get close to that? Like, how does that make you feel as a creative, bro?
Yeah, well, how do we come close to them, eh? But we do, bro, because we're the tupuna of Apopo. And I guess what that does is encourages us to, think a little bit deeper. If we're gonna tell a history, let's tell it in a fantastical way. Let's embed it with different kōrero. Let's do that. And I really, really encourage all of our people, and by telling that Maui story, by telling of my lived experience, this is what happened. I pulled an island out of the water. I saw it with my own eyes. I was on the waka. My navigator, he told us the way. He was using Maui's fishhook. He was using that, and he led us. And then we pulled that island out of the water. And people are like, oh, that's what it means. And if you go, that's what that story means, then what does the next story mean?
Wow.
What does that story mean? Oh, what about this one? Oh, it's endless, and then it opens it up, and that's what I'm excited. Like, we need to bust open all of those stories, especially because most of them were written down by white Christian males.
Sure, bro.
Most of our stories, if you look anything that's written, most of them were written by those fellas who had their own worldview, their own bias, their own agenda. Like, where's all our stories about our hine?
Right.
Where are they?
There's none.
Yeah, very, very little. That's held on to, and usually the hine is a villain. Look, Mahuika, she's a villain.
Wow.
Hine nui te pō, she's a villain. But she's not a demonic atua, but she looks after all of our mate.
Wow.
She cares for our people once they pass away. Ko koe ki te ao, ko au ki te pō. I'll look after them when they pass. And so, like, look at the way that we've been conditioned with these stories, especially te takahi te mana wahine, bro. Yeah, I've been raised by women, all of my mateiranga. Heaps of it. Most of it comes from the wahine in my life. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful, bro.
So we need to re-examine this stuff, eh?
Yeah, and I think the way that you bring it out, and you just catch me, bro, and you take me on this journey, and I'm sure the listeners and the viewers, in terms of the way you place certain kupu, and you sort of trying to bring us into how you view the world, bringing us into certain things that have actually happened in your life. It's like, whoa, I'm there with you.
Yeah.
And it just gives me the sense as to like the richness in storytelling, the richness in purakau, the richness in identity, the richness in, I guess, our whakapapa and history of who we come from. And do you think there's a beautiful kōrero from the sister Hana Tapiata? Self-awareness doesn't begin with self, but in order to know where we're going, we must first know where we come from.
Yeah.
So what's your whakaaro on that, bro?
That's a whole nother wananga in itself, eh? But I think it is, it is through these wananga, through looking at our whakapapa, looking at our kōrero nehe, like that's been something that we've dove into over and over again. Even te kauwairunga, te kauwairaro, looking at that, every time you look at it, you see something different.
Wow.
Every time you look at it, and when you wānanga, like your yarns with the bro Donnie with te kanapu, wānanga isn't, I'm going to lecture you. Like we throw that word around too much these days. Like people say, come to a wananga, and then you turn up and it's a lecture.
It's a lecture.
That's not a wananga. Wananga is, every person has a koha to put in, and you examine it, you miri it. Well, how does that feel? Yeah, no, that feels good. I'll take that on, but I'm going to leave that. Or how do we get a concept and then develop on it? And then here, you develop it a little bit more. Oh, yeah, if you add yours, that's wananga.
And that's expanding people's awareness, and I guess it's more of an invitation as well, eh? That's the kind of ahua that I have when I suppose I share within wananga, or even in these spaces. It's not necessarily direct, but it's more so a kōrero that I share that sort of lands on this imaginary table in front of us.
Yeah, and
it's up to you. Yeah. Whatever you feel like having, up to you. But if you're just not hungry for any of this kōrero, then that's kei te pai as well.
Yeah.
And I feel just having those kinds of approaches to the things that we share and the things that we do just helps it to be more inclusive.
Yeah.
And invites people more so on this journey. And so
empowering, bro. Empowering. Like if people go, you might have 5 of us around this table and you hold most of the knowledge at this point. So you might be sharing a lot of the kōrero. And then it goes, okay, so what do I think about that? I think this about that. That quiet person that usually doesn't say boo, and, they're thinking, they might see this thing in a way that none of us,
that's right,
at any point in our life could see it in that way. And they went, what about this? And they have added to that wananga, and they've opened up this key for all of us that, would have never looked at it this way. Say if there's a bunch of extroverts and one introvert, immediately there's going to be a different way of looking at a kaupapa, whatever the kaupapa is, so they can unlock that. And that can only happen in wananga, bro.
Wow.
And it's also an energy thing. Like the energy is going this way in a lecture, whereas a wananga, we're all feeding in.
It's like mutually beneficial, eh?
Yeah. And you feel it. You feel the
Yeah.
buzz, eh? Like we're having a wananga between us that, we'll grab on a concept and then feed it, and the energy is like expansive.
And there's those ones where you're just like, whoa, you just...
Yeah.
Stay in the zone.
Yeah.
Those are the best ones. It's like that enlightenment, bro. It's like there's those amazing things, and they happen at certain stages in our life because perhaps we've been asking ourselves a question. Perhaps we just know that, there's something, I wouldn't say there's something missing, but there is something that we're in search for. And I often find that in those wananga where perhaps I need to release something, or perhaps it frees up space for something more to come in. And man, I really live for those moments, eh?
Yeah.
Those are the moments that really just add so much spice and magic into my life, bro. And I think about you again, Te Rawhitiroa, growing up, alongside your kuia, alongside your whānau, and growing up immersed in Te Ao Māori. But some would look at you and be like, hey,
This is Page.
who's this fella? So how have you been able to, I guess, go through that process of perhaps people have these perceptions, whakaaro, but, how do you hold steadfast in your own identity, bro?
Yeah, I think that's been a journey, eh? Māori, Pākehā and Dutch whakapapa. And yeah, bro, the number of times I've been called Paulet, or, who's this Pākehā, funny as, walk into a marae and Nanny over in the corner's like, oh, ko ai tēnei Pākehā, ku mai ana ki tō tātou whare. And then the whakatau finishes, and then I get up and whai kōrero back, and then she's like, oh, kia ora moko. That sort of thing, that's always happened. And I know as a young fella, bro, I used to be ashamed as...
Wow.
I remember at Tokumapi Mauria, we were the first kids at that kura. Us and, the different whānau, we all came together and we were the first kids at that kura. And I remember, bro, getting up and we had our kapaka performance. Bro, I was the kaitātaki. And then just before going out on stage, bro, total meltdown, hiding behind the curtain, crying and stuff like that. And wishing that I was this tall, looked like Maui, bro. Long hair, moko, brown, and going, I don't look like any of that. And then also, so that was me at age 6, 7. And then through my life, in Māori situations being the white kid, and Pākehā situations being this Māori kid, like right. How I think, how I talk, Māori katoa. And so a lot of the time it has been that, or especially in Māori situations, I think like as a young fella, I felt like I had to prove
Wow.
myself. So I went even more hard out. And I'm a pretty hard out dude anyway. Like if I do anything, I'll do it handy. But I do think, you know, that in reflection, that's something that drove me even more hard out. I was like, oh, you want to call me white boy? Watch this, you know?
So you used it as fuel at times.
Dive in, yeah. And I think that just might be part of my contrary nature is like, you know, my maths teacher at high school said I was going to fail maths, told my mum I was going to fail maths, and I was like, yeah, watch this. I suck at maths. Watch this. Passed maths, you know, with a, you know, C or something like that, but I passed, you know, it was that sort of thing. So I think that, you know, this Pākehā looking kid, I feel like that made me go extra hard into my Ao Māori.
Wow.
And cool, you know, it is where I am now, but, you know, maybe I didn't need to do that, you know. Maybe if I actually felt good about myself at that time, then I wouldn't have had to go as hard or like stress or, you know, those other sort of stresses if I was more comfortable with myself.
And do you feel that's helped when you've done mahi with rangatahi as well, as, you know, you can sort of empathise, or you have this sort of, I guess, experience that you've had which helps you sort of like nurture our young people and perhaps not sort of, I guess, they don't need to overextend themselves to prove anything.
Yeah. Oh, it's just, bro, like, that was one of the biggest things with Kotuia is just like, bro, you're just awesome as you are. So if you're the extrovert and you want to stand in the middle of the stage and la la la, awesome. Equally awesome if you're the introvert and you don't, and you want to be the props maker, or you want to be the, you know, the costume designer, set designer, director, whatever, you know. Same sort of thing. You know, yeah, because there's heaps of Māori that look like us, you know, heaps more and more, you know, whether you look like that or whether you're, you know, because I knew at the same time, like growing up, I was also conscious of my white privilege, you know, so me and my brown mates or me and my brown cousins, we're rolling somewhere and then the cop car comes up, I'll step forward and talk to the cop. Wow. So they didn't have to or whatever. And that was just, I didn't think about it, oh, I have to. I was just like, that's just, you know, what happened, or those sorts of situations.
Wow.
Where at the time I wasn't aware of it, but like as I got older, I was like, bro, that's white privilege. Shit, check that, you know, like understand that. But yeah, no, it's still a thing, you know, it's still a thing to grapple with or to negotiate, to grow with. Yeah, still part of my life, but I guess now I'm known enough that when I turn up in a situation, people are already like, oh, that's Rawhitiroa, rather than who's this white guy. Yeah. I still get it.
Yeah.
But just in generally speaking, the people that matter know, and if they're talking to me like that, you know, calling me a bullet or whatever, then they don't matter, obviously.
Yeah. You know? Wow, bro, that's a powerful sort of like kōrero there, bro. And I think about, you know, where your huarahi is sort of like taking you, this common things that I've been hearing about today is just one, recognizing our superpower, recognizing our identity. And is there part in that, when you're looking deeper into those things, does our passion or our expression come from that, bro? Like, when did you know you want to do photography? Like, how was that? Like, how did that even happen?
Maui, yeah. So I didn't study photography at school or any time afterwards. And it was literally just being a tutu. I just borrowed my dad's little digital camera. Those ones you click it and then 3 seconds later it takes the photo, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah, mate.
Just being a tutu, eh? And then I entered a photo competition and won it. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then after I left school, it wasn't until after I left school, got a job, saved up, got my first camera, started shooting whānau events and stuff like that, and then got asked to do other things. And, you know, one thing led to another. I had this awesome break in Whangaroa. I was shooting for the backdrop of a fashion show. They had a back projector. It was cool as. And so I shot different kind of themes for each section of the fashion show. Anyway, one of them was harakeke. So I'd taken these cool as photos of harakeke, had them up there, and then at the end, one of the judges, she had a health spa in a subdivision out in Whangaroa, Flax Cove, and she was like, I have to have those images. They're perfect for my branding, you know, for visual identity. So I was like, oh yeah, cool. So I talked to some people, you know, got some advice, and went, oh yeah, how much? End of the day, it was like, got a laptop for 6 photos, and I was like, this is pretty cool. Like, oh yeah, I like that, you know. And then one thing led to another, and ended up just doing different mahi, you know, shooting different events, bro. I shot some weddings for like nothing, you know, like the amount of hours of work in a wedding is stressful.
It's
and
crazy.
these heaps, bro. And I was just, so, you know, did the grind and shot for nothing, and then, you know, got to a stage now where, because I was doing that youth development, kaupapa, and then on the weekends I'd be shooting music gigs or, you know, shooting different weddings and things like that on the side. And then it did get to a point where I was like, you know what, I want to give this a crack and go like full in and jump off the cliff. Nice salary, nice, you know, regular, you know what you're doing every week, da 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 da, da. And then it's like, yo,
And then,
yeah, right, haven't landed since that. Yeah, and you know, and man, I haven't.
what's
looked
been
back.
carrying you then, bro? Because obviously you had the backing, you've been putting in the reps, you know, been doing all of this free mahi.
All of the reps.
You know, you've been taking all of these photos, you've been doing mahi in between, meaningful mahi.
Yeah.
You've still been developing your craft, and then you just got to this point where you're like, oh, I'm getting busy enough to actually go in, and I love this enough. And did you see the opportunity? Did you just feel yourself, I guess, just enjoying what you're doing? Like, what has kept you in that sort of like flight mode?
Yeah, great question, bro. I think one of the things before I left, I went and had a yarn to my boss, awesomest boss, and I went and had a yarn to her, and I said, excuse me, I went and had a yarn to my boss, and I told her next matariki, this was like 6 months out from matariki, I was like, next matariki, I want to finish working here, and I want to go and do photography full time. She was like, okay, so we had to, for that 6 months, you know, was picking down all of my responsibilities, handing over what we needed to, shutting down other things that we weren't, and at the same time, I was starting to ramp up my photography work, so that by the time I was ready to jump off one waka, I had my other waka built.
Wow.
You know, so because I'd already been working as a photographer, so I was already starting to get known. You know, back in those days, I was starting to build a rep, and then I started to pick up my work rate, started to set up things like getting my accounts, you know, basic stuff, bro. But we miss out on that, you know,
Yeah,
like a lot
that's
of us
right.
don't do that. But set those things in place so that when I actually did kick into the business, bro, I was cranking.
Wow, that's such a beautiful way of looking at it too, because sometimes, you know, we just jump and then we just put all our eggs in this one basket, and sometimes it works for some people, but having that element of preparation actually like helps, you know. And the one thing that I do when I make decisions, and this is out of a business context, but I'm doing 75 hard at the moment, and it's
Oh,
day
man.
44, and it's been something that I've been
Solid,
wanting to
stay
do.
on it.
Bro, staying on it. It's been something that I've been wanting to do for some time. I saw Honui do it first last year. I've been following Andy Frisella. I just know what kind of mental capacity you have to be at in order to really do this kaupapa kia tuturu. And I had that last year, and I just knew I couldn't do it. But coming into this year, I was like, let me
Ready.
prep and let me try on the 1st of May. So same thing. It was me. I knew when I was going to try. So in that whole time, I was preparing
You
my
prepped yourself.
mindset, and I
Yeah.
was moving my energy and picking up on different things that I want to try. Like, how am I going to work out? I started planning it before I had even got there. So by the time it came, man, we were just ready. We were already there mentally. And I feel that's a beautiful part, and something perhaps that's overlooked when we're stepping into something that's unknown or something that we know is going to be challenging. How can we mentally prepare? How can we strategize certain things to make that transition a lot easier?
And set up your people too, bro. That was a big thing for me. Like, before I went solo, I'd started to tell people, oh yeah, after matariki, I'm going full-time into my business. Let people know, you know. So I'm not where I am by being on my own.
Wow.
You know, like everything I do is because I'm connected to people, and everything that I'm able to do, like able to, if I come up with a vision, I can like nail, like I can whakatinana. That's because of the people that I know and the connections that I have. And so, yeah, in the lead up, I started to tell people, you know, oh yeah, I'm going to be going full time soon. So yeah, if you need a photographer, you know, holla, let me know, that sort of thing. And actually, it was one of my mates, Nicholas Maka, And he did that 75 hard, bro, and I got so much respect for the bro. Just he cranked it, but it was like just before I kicked off, talking to another mate of mine, Erica Sinclair, another photographer, just saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna go crank this soon and stuff like that. And so we talked to each other, and then we ended up I ended up getting a couple of kind of bigger contracts, with Nick down at Te Punikokiri. And then another one with Waikato Tainui, and these were the sort of contracts that I knew, okay, I'll get one job a month. Sweet, that's like a baseline, and then I can build on that. And that was one thing, and that's been a relationship. Me and Nick have known each other for years now, and he knows if he calls, I'll be there, and I got his back on, whatever the kaupapa is, and we'll, professionals, we will deliver. Professionals, babe. So you watch this, I'm going to get a potai professionals, babe. That's going to, But that's our crew now, like me and the bros that I roll with now, professionals. And that's always, how we've been rolling. We want to be bros, we want to, have fun and do our thing, but we also want to smash it.
Yeah.
Deliver to high quality. I don't want to muck around with anything, I don't want to half do anything. But
that's
yeah,
a
so that was
mindset, and I think that comes down to, I guess, just the amount of either respect or aroha that we have for life itself,
Yeah,
and I
for the people.
Wow, bro. And I love how you just keep bringing it back to people as well, because that's such a I think when we're in that space of thinking of others and being in that space of being connected to many people, it sort of helps us. It's like another word that you said was whakatinana. When we do things and we sort of acknowledge other people on our own journey, there's something beautiful that happens out of that. And I look at, some of the things that you are doing, bro, and the many kaupapa that you're a part of. It seems as though, one, you'll be there, but now you get to do it in a different way as well, where you can show it and reveal these beautiful kaupapa that you're a part of.
Yeah, and that's like my aho matua now with my photography work and with the podcasting with Kitua and and the blockchain navigators even. The different kaupapa, basically anything that I do now has to have something to do with uplifting our people. So if it's not, I just don't do it. Like if it's not a kaupapa that's that's uplifting our people, either our reo, our tikanga, our ahurea, then I just don't do it.
Wow.
That's a privilege now to be able to just spend all my time doing that, bro. It's so enriching, it's so rich. But that's one of the aho matuas that, like with my photography work, bro, we've got the whole world or all of the mainstream media. When we say mainstream, I mean Pākehā media, telling us Māori's a sick Māori, a sad Māori, a bad Māori, a useless dad, whatever. That is generally, if you look at 100 news stories, 99 of them, 98 of them will say that, and there'll be the nice little cutesy one at the end that'll say, oh yeah, happy Māori did this. But that's the general story that's been going for generations before us, bro. And if you tell someone they're dumb enough times, we're going to start believing you're dumb.
That's right.
And so counter to that, and social media has been massive, bro, because the power used to only be in the hands of those people with the who were running the TV or the newspaper, same people. The power only used to be there, but now with social media, bro, planting seeds for how many years?
That's right, bro.
Off your own back, not asking anyone, not shaping your narrative to fit anyone else's thing. This is coming from your ngākau. This is what I want to do. So for me, if I'm there as a photographer, and I can capture, powerful images of our people, beautiful images of our people, of our inspiring people, of our genius people, of our loving, caring, manakitanga on point every day, that sort of thing. Like if I can take photos of those things and our people just being Māori, just being awesome, as we know we're awesome, but if I can capture those and put those out there and pump them out there, bro, and I just pump it out there to the universe, bro, because we're fighting a tidal wave. So a tidal wave's coming this way, and we're throwing all this good stuff the other way, because I want two things. I want our people to see us as we are. I want our people to see us and go, yeah, actually, we are awesome. We are genius. We are really, really clever. We are creative. We are skilled. We are talented. We are all of these things. I want us to see that so we can start going, yeah, that's us. You know, when I see a Māori like kicking us on anything, I'm like, yeah, that's us.
That's on.
Yeah, Māori, stand up, yeah. You know? And I want Tauiwi and everyone else to see us for who we are as well, because that's the other thing. The access I get, you know, I'm in so many beautiful, awesome kaupapa. That's a privileged position. So the access I get, and I get like all access, all areas sort of thing, you know, I get to capture our people being our very best. So when I put that out there, that's giving a counter narrative to the main narrative that's out there about the 6 sad bad Māori. You know, that's going, far. These guys are clever, you know, or these guys are loving, or these guys, whoa, the amount of talent. But that bad dad thing that I was telling you, every single hui I go to, whenever I see dads doing their hair, their daughters tying up her ponytail, or, you know, loving the babies and stuff, that's the first thing I'll capture that, and then I'll pump that out there to go, nah, remember, we are awesome dads.
That's who we are.
We always have been awesome dads. And yeah, there was some years where the trauma after, you know, all our men went away to war, came back, all our land was gone, and they came back with PTSD, and all of their land was given away to the Pākehā soldiers that came back, and that sort of thing. So, of course, there's going to be this trauma. Like, that's where all this Jake the Musk came from, you know, of course. But that's not who we are.
It for their face value.
That's a symptom, bro.
Yeah.
That's not who we are. It's a symptom of what's happened through as a result of these things, as a result of loss of culture, loss of whenua. But your pito, your hononga to your pito, if you cut that off, where's your nutrients coming from? Where's your mauri coming from? You know, those sorts of things. These are symptoms. And so, like that picture of, oh, that's a Māori. If you're a Māori, you got to be like that. It's like, nah, bro. Māori, we're mean as dads. And we still are now. Like, you know, like you and your baby are. I'm sure I could turn up to your house any day of the week, at any time of the week, and I will get a banger photo of you loving with all your shining light, you know, on your baby, you know,
100.
and you and all my mates hook up, you know, with their babies. It's the same sort of thing. So,
Bro.
yeah, like for me, it's reclaiming that storytelling, bro. Again, like the story of Maui, it's different if white male missionary tells that story about Maui. Is different to if I tell that story of Maui now.
That's right, bro.
You know, it's a different story.
Very much
It's the same story. It's a completely different story. And so that's why I'm excited about us reclaiming the narrative. Like every time you have a kai kōrero that shares their perspective, that shares their heart, that shares their life experience, bro, you're changing that narrative. You're going, oh yeah, no, this is what it really is. This is what's really here, bro.
Bro, it's sort of like, it's like the things that I hear, bro, is there's a strong why.
Yeah.
There's a big reason as to like why you do the things that you do, and there's a big reason why you haven't come down. Is because your mahi is so uplifting. And one of the kupu that I learnt at Tohekura from the sister Moirangi Black, she said, me whakakungia tēnei mea te ao Māori. You know, whakakungia, you know, let's make Māori being cool.
Oh, yeah, whakakungia. Oh,
whakakungia. So I was just like really looking at everything that you're saying and just how amazing we are as Māori, and just coming back to, again, you know, the foundation of our kōrero. We have our superpowers within us. You know, we have the strong identity of who we are as Māori. We're deep and meaningful people, and we've got all of these beautiful stories with so many lessons just embedded within all of them. And also it's just awakening our own passions through exploration and planning ahead and accordingly, that allows us to be that more often than everything else. And so I just want to do a big mihi over to you, brother, and just want to pass it over to you if you have any final words for this session that we've been in, brother.
Yeah, I think so many different ways that we can look at life, but I reckon if we look around us at the people that are around us and really think about those sorts of relationships, how can we support and uplift others, and how can others support and uplift us? Like, I need to get better at asking for help. Like, I'll help everyone on all of their kaupapa, but I'm like ratchet at asking for help, or, you know, knowing when to take a rest and take a back step and let someone else run the ball for a bit. But I think if we look at the people around us and really nurture those connections, that's the richness of being Māori, eh?
Wow.
You know, e harei te mea, e hara taku toi te tua takitahi, he toa takitini, and those, if we all kind of reclaim our voice, reclaim our storytelling, we're telling the story about ourselves, not letting someone else tell the story about us, but, we're the storytellers, and then we can tell that rich story. Like, I really want our people to really start examining our kōrero nehe, start examining the stories that have been told about us, and examining our own stories, like, what does that really mean? And if you perpetuate a story, like what if I never told you about what Antonio said about Mahuika?
That's right.
You would still be thinking Mahuika she was an idiot who, got duped this many times by Maui. But by that, telling you that story in a one different way, you're like, oh, Mahuika's actually boss. Like, that sort of thing. So I reckon, for our people to really examine the stories that are told about us, and then start reclaiming and telling our own.
Wow. Beautiful, brother. Thank you so much. And you're right, bro. It's just these little conversations that expand our awareness and also just helps us to better understand, I guess, who we are on a deeper level. And I think just the way that you are a storyteller, bro, just narrating the things that you've been able to experience has been such a taonga for this kaupapa, bro. So e mihi ana kia koe mō tēnā, and just very stoked that we've been able to finally make this connection, bro. And just so grateful for all that you've shared and all the mahi that you do. Bro, you do a really great job in making everything Māori so cool. By the images that you capture, but also just the way that you stand there and the pride that you have in there, brother. So thank you very much for coming on the show, and we'll definitely do more in the future, brother.
For sure, bro.
Mihi ana, brother.